Hello and welcome, and thank you for tuning in today. I have a question for you. Have you received a bill, a credit card statement, or a debt collection letter to your home in your minor child's name? Or how about a pre approved credit offer? Think about it for a second. In your child's name. If your answer is yes, your child could be a victim of identity theft. My name is Linda Williams, and I am a community outreach and training manager with Consumer Action, and I am so happy to be with you today. Consumer Action is a national nonprofit educational and advocacy organization fighting for strong consumer rights and policies for all consumers, but especially underrepresented communities nationwide. Today, we're so excited to be partnered with the Identity Theft Resource Center during Identity Theft Awareness Week to present this informational session on child identity theft. Now, you may think that identity theft couldn't happen to your child, but the sad truth is that it could. According to Javelin Strategy and Research 2022 Child Identity Fraud Study, 915,000 915,000 children were victim of ID theft and fraud in the past year, with children under the age of 7 being the most victimized, costing an average of $1,128 for a single household. Now, for struggling households out there in those underrepresented community, that's a lot. Unfortunately, child identity theft can go undiscovered for years. Most parents aren't checking their credit reports, so they're definitely not checking to see if their child have one. And it can have an impact more than a financial impact on the child. But don't take my word for it. Let's turn to an expert for an overview of ID theft and fraud targeting minors and what parents and guardians can do to reduce the risk to their children. We are honored to have joining with us a very good friend of Consumer Action, Miss Eva Velasquez. She is the president and CEO of the Identity Theft Resource Center. She is an identity theft avenger. She's also a published author. Let me tell you a little bit more about her. Eva previously served as the vice president of organization for the San Diego Better Business Bureau, and for 21 years, she was at the San Diego District Attorney's Office. She is a recognized expert who has been featured on CBS Mornings, NBC Nightly News, CNBC American Greed, Fortune, the New York Times, NPR, the Associated Press, need I say more, and numerous other media outlets. In addition, Eva received the National Crime Victims Service Award from the United States Department of Justice and the National Consumer League's Florence Kelly Consumer Leadership Award. Eva, Happy New Year and welcome back. We're so happy that you were able to join us today. Please, can you tell our audience about what you do at ITRC? And please educate us on child ID theft, what it is, how it occurs, the impact that it can have on families, and how parents and guardians can reduce their child's risk of being a target of identity theft.
Well, thanks, Linda. I am so happy to be back with my friends at Consumer Action, and I'm really pleased that you're all listening because we'll get some great information today. Let me make sure I can advance my slides here. Um, today we're going to cover, as Linda said, child identity theft, an overview of this type of fraud, how it targets minors, and most importantly, what you can do to protect them. And hopefully you'll learn a few tips for yourself as well. A little background on the ITRC. We are a 501c3 nonprofit. We were established in 1999, and all of our recovery services and risk minimization services are free to the public. We do a lot of consumer education, just like today's webinars, and all of these things are free to the public. Reach out if you need us. We'll talk about that at the end, how you can get in touch with us. A quick overview, what we're going to talk about today, PII, personally identifiable information, what it is and how the fraudsters get it. We'll talk about some of the different types of identity theft and fraud that impacts minors, how to recognize it, and then of course those handy tips at the end on how you can protect your minor's identity and help them recover it if it is indeed used for fraudulent purposes. So let's do a little bit deeper dive into PII. You're going to hear that term a lot, personally identifiable information, and how the heck do the thieves get their hands on it? PII, there are credentials and there are attributes. So your credentials, social security number, a birth certificate, driver's license, financial accounts, usernames and passwords, a passport number. Those are those key credentials that when compromised or used they create that identity fraud opportunity. And then there are your attributes. These are things that are sensitive. They are considered PII, but a little less risky when they're compromised. A name, a phone number, a license plate, especially for minors who, have their own vehicle and their date of birth. But there are other types of identity data that we don't necessarily think about. I think a lot of people think, oh yes, my social security number, that's definitely something that I need to protect, and that's part of my identity. But so are your biometrics, things like fingerprints and voice print, and even a photograph. That actually is a biometric. That's how facial recognition works, and the facial authentication. We use biometric photos. And then there are your behaviors. These things are all being tracked, especially online when you're using apps, when you're logging in, your spending habits, your browsing activity, and when you take online quizzes. Believe me, that information is being tracked, it's being mined, it's being reviewed, often it's being sold. That's why reading those terms and conditions is so important. But those are all parts of your identity data. Now, in order to kind of break this down, we categorize identity fraud, the misuse of your information or your child's information, into four major categories. There's financial, which of course is just what it sounds like. It's when your data is used to open financial instruments like a credit card, a bank account, even loans, even payday loans. Then there's medical identity theft, where your information is used to get medical goods or services. And that can be anything from, an office visit to a hospital stay. It even includes things like durable medical equipment, like, crutches and things of that nature, and prescriptions. Then there's criminal identity theft. This is where your information is used during the commission of a crime. It's provided to law enforcement. And this can be all across the spectrum, anything from a simple moving violation like running a stop sign, all the way up to a felony. And the last one is government identity theft, and that's where your information is used to get government benefits or services. And unfortunately, your minor child's information can be used to commit all of these different types of identity fraud. Now, so how do the fraudsters, how do these identity thieves actually obtain your child's personally identifiable information? Well, data breaches is one way. ITRC has been tracking data breaches since 2005, and in fact, we just released our latest report on the state of data breaches. And so this is where companies that are collecting your information, and it's necessary often. Your school and a medical office, they need this information, but sometimes they don't do the best job in protecting it, and so that data is compromised. It can also be stolen. If you have to mail something with sensitive information, or perhaps you're taking it with you, you've got these documents on the move and they're stolen out of your purse or your car. It can also be exposed to other trusted adults, sometimes within the household, sometimes they're just visiting. But if we don't secure that information and it's available for other individuals to take within our home or whatever our living situation is, that's a vulnerability, and that's how it can be obtained. And then of course for older children, they can self-compromise. It's usually that they're sharing it online on social media accounts and generally with peers, but you never know who's listening or viewing on the other end of that connection. And we'll talk about social media safety a little bit further in the presentation. So how does this actually impact our kids? What does it look like when identity theft and identity fraud are perpetrated against minors? Here's some common examples. If you think about how you use, as an adult, how you use your own identity credentials to just live your life, just to conduct business out there in the world. It's things like opening financial accounts, bank accounts, credit cards, loans, student loans, auto loans, payday loans. Sometimes it can be around your taxes. Taxes, fraudulent taxes can be filed using the child's information as the actual taxpayer. Now, there's also where the child can be claimed as a dependent, and I do want to make it clear that when you have a non-custodial parent who is claiming a child as a dependent on their own tax return and it's not within keeping within a custody order, that is not considered identity theft. We're talking about someone that's unknown to you or your child that's simply using their data. Um, Other examples, someone can use that social security number for employment purposes so that they can demonstrate their ability to be employed in the US. And then, of course, government benefits claimed or even taken over. If your child is receiving those benefits, there can be an account takeover where those benefits are then circumvented and taken by a fraudster. How do we find this out? You know, it's interesting because the most common way that adults discover that they are a victim is because they're trying to move forward in their life in some manner. They're actually trying to legitimately maybe apply for credit, purchase a new vehicle, open a bank account, apply for benefits, and then they hit a roadblock because they discover that there's been a misuse of their identity. Kids don't operate in the world the same way. They aren't out doing these things. And so it's really up to us to be very active in looking for these vulnerabilities and keeping an eye on their identity credentials and those identity misuses. Here's some ways that you can actually recognize if your child is a victim. Big red flag, receiving financial statements, things like, you know, credit card statements, bank statements for new accounts, even denial of credit being issued in your child's name. Now, sometimes you will get an offer for credit in your child's name, and one or two here or there can be just an error, just like a typographical error that they shouldn't be receiving it. Doesn't necessarily mean that your child is a victim of identity theft, but it's absolutely worth following up on because you won't know until you follow up. Other ways, that denial of benefits that I was talking about, medical, government assistance, taxes, all forms of, you know, within the government sphere. If you receive a W-2 form in the child's name that's showing that they're employed, that they have a job, oftentimes when we do discover misuse, you'll see wages and earning history that go back years for, you know, a child who's actually legitimately 5 years old, but they have a 10-year work history. And then again, for older children, it's a loss of access to online accounts. All of a sudden, they can't get into their social media accounts. Maybe it's an educational, like an E2020 account, but that can be a real indicator that someone has taken over those accounts and that they're vulnerable. Well, what can you do about it? How can we protect our kids? The good news is that there are a number of things that you can do, and we're going to do a deep dive into them. We're going to talk about some good old-fashioned, old-school analog things, really talking about the hard paper documents. We'll talk about password management and multi-factor authentication. We'll talk about protecting the actual physical devices, a little bit on social media safety, and then, of course, the holy grail, reviewing and freezing credit reports. And the great news is here, parents who are listening, that all of these tips, they actually will help you as adults as well. So you're learning for yourself and for your kids. Let's talk about shredding documents and storing and securing documents. We advise that you keep all of those foundational identity documents, things like birth certificate, social security card, a passport, in a secure lockbox. Fire safe is best because it's very protective, but you know, barring that, just something that's secure. If you have documents that you need to get rid of and destroy, make sure that they have PII on them. Make sure that you shred those documents. Don't just toss them in the trash. Dumpster diving is still a real thing. It's not anywhere near as prevalent as a lot of the digital attacks that we see, but it still does exist. And this is a really important one. When you must take those documents with you and use them for legitimate reasons, make sure that you then put them back in the secure box. Don't leave them in the car. Don't leave them in your purse. We've talked to plenty of victims who had a really good reason for taking those documents with them. They had to conduct some kind of business, and then they forgot and left them in the car. There's a break into the car, and all of those documents are gone. Upgrading your password is one of the simplest things that you can do, and it has a lot of return on the investment. Using a unique password on every account, 12 characters or longer, it doesn't have to be all that gobbledygook. It can be a passphrase. Maybe it's a favorite book or movie quote, a song lyric, something like that. And if you have too many and it's hard to manage, use a password manager if that's intuitive for you. But I would much rather see you even writing down your passwords, keeping them, and I mean analog, on a piece of paper in a notebook, and keeping them in that secure location where you're storing the foundational identity documents that you have for yourself and your child. That is still going to reduce your risk. It's much better to do that rather than use the same easy password over multiple accounts. And then multi-factor authentication, or MFA. This is this extra layer of security that you can sign up for. And when you do, when you log into an online account using your username and password, you'll get what's called an OTP, one-time password, usually a set of 6 numbers that you then have to enter in within a very short period of time. They do expire, but you enter that in when you log in. This is a great extra layer of security because even if a username and password are compromised in some manner, without that OTP code, you still cannot get access to the account. The thing is, MFA is not mandatory on a lot of accounts. It's an option. And a lot of us think, well, if it's not mandatory, I'm not going to do it. But I'm going to encourage you to please enable MFA on all of your accounts. It really is a very robust protection. But it's not just about the platforms or the software. We also have to protect our devices. This may sound really basic, adding the PIN or the biometric lock to your mobile device, but I still talk to folks today that think it's really an inconvenience, and it's not. It's super important to protect your device this way, because if it does get lost or stolen, you don't want someone else to have access to everything that you have in your phone. Also, enable Find Your Phone. It's available on both the iOS and the Android platform, and it will allow you to do a factory reset and reset your phone if it is in fact stolen, so that all of the data that's on there is completely wiped. And even if someone could get into your phone, they will not be able to access any of the data because you've basically turned it into a brick. And the last one, apply those software and patch and app updates as soon as they come out. A lot of us feel like this is such an inconvenience, I'll get around to it, but realize that these patches and these updates are addressing known vulnerabilities within these systems. And so as soon as these organizations release these updates, not only do you know that there are known vulnerabilities that have to be patched, so do the scammers. So then it becomes a race. Go ahead and make it a priority to apply the software updates and those patches as soon as they come out, because the thieves know when those vulnerabilities are being, and they have the opportunity to exploit those. Now, social media, this is really more for the adults and older children, but make your accounts private. I know that's a hard conversation to have, especially with teens, because they feel like that's the whole point of social media, is to have this huge footprint and have everybody know everything about them. But we really do want to look at the privacy settings. Don't rely on the default privacy settings because they are not privacy centric at all. Verify requests before you accept them. Again, I know kids especially want to build up a robust following, but you don't know who's at the other end of that request. It may seem like it's a classmate or someone that's also, in your sports league or something like that, but we don't actually know because there's no verification within these platforms. And then, of course, always be careful what you post, because if you wouldn't put it on a billboard in the, on your front lawn, you probably don't want to put it on your social media account. Those things are forever. They don't go away, and they can follow kids well into adulthood. Now, this is a wonderful tool, and this is checking and freezing your minor's credit report. And adults, you can do it for yourself too. I think Linda said in the beginning, while you're at it, parents, check your reports as well. Now, ideally, when you reach out to the three major credit bureaus, Equifax, Experian, and TransUnion, you will ask them to check the credit report for your minor, and you will get back that there's no file. That is exactly what we want. We don't want there to be a file. And then the next step that you will take is you freeze their credit. It is free. There is no fee to do this. It is a little bit more involved to do it for your child, because not only do you have to provide those identity documents to the credit bureaus, you also have to demonstrate that you have the legal authority to make decisions on behalf of this child. So you're either their parent or a guardian in some cases. I know that that can be a little daunting. People think, I don't want to take the risk of sending these documents in the mail, but it is well worth the risk. The risk is much smaller doing that than it is just having their credit reports open and not frozen. Now, the second thing that can happen when you request that report is that you unfortunately get something back that shows that your child has a credit history. If that's the case, there is a process. You need to dispute all of the trade lines on that credit report. I won't go into the deep details here, because I just want you to reach out and get help. You can contact the Identity Theft Resource Center. We have a lot of experience in this area. We will assign you an advisor who will walk you through the process step by step. So if that does happen, don't worry, you have help and you have support. And those are all the tips. I really want to encourage people, for the victims and consumers who are on the line listening, please remember, all of our services are free to the public. We have direct one-on-one assistance. You can call us on our toll-free hotline. You can live chat with us at our website, idtheftcenter.org. We have an online help portal where you can get that self-directed help. It's very intuitive. You can get a lot of information. You can sign up for our newsletter. Really, we are here for you and just want you to engage and continue to build your awareness. And for anyone at community organizations or law enforcement partners, please reach out. We can create a referral partnership with you where you can send the victims that are coming to you. You can send them to us for that extra help. We have free training opportunities. We can even embed our live chat on your website so that victims can seamlessly engage with us when they need that extra level of help that you don't have the resources at your agency to provide. And with that, I will turn it back over to Linda.
Thank you, Eva. Thank you for all of that information. I am going to send a link to this recording to all of my grandkids and their high school counselors for sure. You're only a click away if you're interested in more information on scams and ID theft. You can go to our website. It's there on the screen, www.consumer-action.org, and you can download our ID theft PowerPoint deck, which lays out some of the different forms of identity theft that was discussed by Eva today. And it will tell you how they occur, what to do if you're what to do if you're a victim. I created that deck, and I did so with you in mind. So go to our website and download a copy today. In addition, you can sign up for our monthly Scamgram newsletter. It will keep you abreast of all of the latest scams that are out there and how they're being perpetrated. So when they come to you, you will be aware. And the brochure that I think should be in everyone's home in America is our How to Complain booklet. We sometimes get emotional and we forget how to complain to get those results. This booklet will provide you with step-by-step guide on how to complain to get results. Download it today and share it with someone you love. Now, if you're interested in contributing to consumer action, you can do so online by credit card or PayPal by going to www.consumer-action.org/giving, or you can mail a check to us, Consumer Action, Attention Membership Given, 57 Post Street, Suite 611, San Francisco, California. If you can't send a check, that's okay. You can support us by subscribing to our YouTube channel. It's free and it would help us continue to bring you these great informational sessions and webinars. Again, I want to thank you for tuning in today. Remember that the best thing that you can do to protect your child in the future is to secure their identity from scammers. Teach your children about the dangers of identity theft and how they can stay safe while they are online because they're all on social media. Thank you, and until next time, stay safe.